Hey, so I just recently finished a book on fawning. It's just called Fawning by Dr. Ingrid Clayton. And while I was reading it, it's talking about emotional abuse and trauma bonding. And while I was reading it, I realized that pretty much this section described everything that I have witnessed or experienced in a network marketing company. So let's talk about it. I am going to keep this really casual and I'm going to go down. It's just a page in a book that I'm just looking at, but um, trying to give some examples. And I welcome any examples you may have in the comments that differ from what I'm giving. So it's talking about fawning in the context of a stress response. We're very familiar with fight or flight, freeze as well. And fawning is the fourth one, basically. And I love how she described it as um, if a freeze response is playing dead, a fawn response is playing alive. So you find yourself doing this in situations where you want to be accepted, you are trying to please someone who, let me just mute this. Um, you're trying to please someone who's in charge, in power, someone that you want something from, someone who might hold your future in their hands, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens when we fawn is, we're playing along. We're not only appeasing that person, but we are at the same time kind of disconnecting ourselves from what our gut says and what we want and what we think is right. And just tuning into like the signals that our physiology is giving us. And if you end up in a chronic state of fawning, you can be taken advantage of. This is where the emotional abuse piece kind of comes in, because if you are giving away that much power to somebody by trying to keep them happy, um, yeah, they have some control over you. So first, she talks about some tactics of emotional abuse, and it's talking about how emotional abuse, when repeated, can create a trauma bond. Emotional abuse kind of perpetuates it. And it's these are the methods used to keep it going, right? Because the person who is in control or in charge or has the power in the situation kind of wants that to continue because they're benefiting from it. So it lists off just 4 overarching tactics: gaslighting, future faking, love bombing, and hoovering. So gaslighting, just described in one sentence here, manipulation designed to make someone question their reality. And a network marketing company is using this tactic from the very beginning, from before you're even in. They are kind of gaslighting you that this is not a pyramid scheme. They are pretending like they aren't trying to recruit you. They are pretending that this is a real business. They are conflating customers with reps, so you're not really sure, okay, how many people are actually in this? How many people are actually making more money than they're spending? Um, and all the way through, right? For me, in my personal example, like with a travel company, um, they're telling you the company's doing better and better in every single announcement that they make. And as someone who's gone back and looked at the records after I got out, there were, lawsuits, the revenue wasn't what they were saying it was. There were all sorts of shady things going on, but they're constantly pretending that everything's fine. Um, so that is a central, obvious tactic used. in a multi-level marketing company. Future faking being promises of a better future with no real intention to carry it out or follow through. It seems to me like this is so straightforward, but I'm pointing it out as a tactic of emotional abuse because for us who now understand the dangers of MLMs, we see that they do this all the time. But for other people who haven't really understood how serious the implications of something like this could be, it is, I think, important to look at it in these terms and say, hey, they are constantly saying things are going to get better. We are expanding. Our company used to love saying, you know, we're going to be $1 billion company in this many years, or we're going to overtake, Amway as the biggest MLM company. No matter what's actually happening in reality, they are promising you that this is the best time to join. There's no, the best time was a year ago, the second best time is today, that things are going to just get so much better. And they say this to every single new recruit at every single event, year after year after year. My MLM experience started in 2015, which is now 11 years ago, which is wild for me to think about. But some of the people who are still in these circles or in other companies or still doing the same thing, they are literally saying the same line. We have the best travel company, the best travel club in the world. The best time to join is right now. We are taking off. We are the Netflix of travel, right? Like, it's constant. The future faking is absolutely constant. Love bombing, a barrage of gifts, compliments, and attention, idealizing you and the relationship as a match made in heaven, whether it is romantic or not. And the love bombing really got me, if I was being honest, because I was joining for community. And the second you join, the amount of people that are saying, you're going to crush this, you're a rock star, welcome to the team, welcome to the family, we're so happy to meet you, or we're so happy you're here, we can't wait to meet you. You get a bunch of new friend requests, people are being so nice to you, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then on top of that, although you don't really understand the insidiousness of how much your upline and your sponsor and your recruiter work together to get you in, they have talked about you. And you have people that are like, you're going to be a rock star. They know your personality. They've figured out what drives you. They speak to it. And they tell you that you're going to crush this thing. You're the ace. You're my ace. The one that's going to go in and put in 100 people. And I mean, it's overwhelming. At my first event, it was really nice. It was really cool to meet so many people that were so nice. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, why is everybody smiling at me so much? It's a little much. It's a little overwhelming. But you aren't really in a place, especially when you're at one of those events, to really look at it objectively. You're kind of immersed and soaked in it. And so, that overwhelm is constructed. It is meant to overwhelm your senses. So you just kind of go along with it. And your gut instincts or things that are looking like red flags to you, kind of get minimized. You kind of push them to the back. And the fourth thing was hoovering. If you know anything about, narcissistic behaviors, hoovering is definitely a tactic that is used. It's to suck people back in. It is to, when they think that you're going to leave, or they think that you might quit, or you might stop showing the plan, or you might not come to the next event, they try to suck you back in, whether that is through a promotion, whether it's like, oh, sign someone up and you'll get to attend this special event at the convention. That's the reason they have the conventions every so often anyways. My company had them once a month regionally, and then quarterly a big convention. And the reason that they do that specifically is because they understand after 90 days, they probably need to suck you back in, get you around the campfire again so they can refresh your mind with all their ideas and get you hyped up again so that you'll go back home and continue to promote. And so I first heard the term hoovering when it came to, narcissistic relationships, but it was really interesting for me to read it here because that is exactly the same thing that is happening when they check back up on you. If your upline hasn't heard from you in a while, they check back up on you. If you haven't signed anyone up in a while, they check in on you. If you don't place your qualifying order that month, they check in on you. These are all emotional abuse tactics. And I know they're kind of normalized in sales spaces, but I think that's a conversation maybe for another day. I do think it's really hard to have, sales is really hard without manipulation at all. It's really hard to find people that are just doing it because people are coming to them and asking for something and they're just fulfilling a request as opposed to out there trying to sell more, right? And so those are the 4 tactics of emotional abuse that she listed. And she was saying that these things, they can be interpreted by our systems as love. They kind of do feel like butterflies, and that's how they get you. But because we haven't really learned a healthy way to distinguish those like unsettling butterflies from like good, healthy, constructive relationships, and especially when you're a chronic people pleaser or fawner, from situations where you're just kind of, stuck in a cycle of emotional abuse. These things can repeat, right? Like I said, they kind of feel like love. They kind of feel like this is awesome. This is an adrenaline rush. So you keep going back, you keep participating. And that's how a trauma bond is created. And I guess for clarification's sake, we should also, just talk about trauma bonding. I think it's used incorrectly. Just in casual conversations, a lot of people go through something hard with someone else and they think, hey, we have a trauma bond. That's not actually it. The trauma bond is between you and the person, the abuser, the one that's taking advantage of. So if you go through something with someone, yes, you have shared trauma, but a trauma bond is between, I guess, unfortunately, the easiest way to describe it for me right now is you have a child who's in an abusive situation at home, but they form a trauma bond with their abuser, oftentimes, especially if it's a caregiver or a parent, because they need that person to stay alive. That person's dependent. They are dependent on that person for their livelihood. So you kind of do have to fawn. You do have to play along to maybe minimize the injury, the insult, the hurt, whatever else is going on, right? So that's where things can get confused because the same person that's supposed to be taking care of you or is showing you all this love is also hurting you, and the signals get crossed and you kind of keep coming back for more until you understand what's actually going on. So this is the part that really got me too, because she has like 9 things listed here on signs of a trauma bond. These aren't all of them, but I could use this to describe network marketing. So first, on and off relationships or with a lot of ups and downs. That is exactly what being a salesperson for an MLM is. You're in a frenzy to constantly make more sales and have more recruits, which isn't sustainable. And you ride this roller coaster. Sales, like I said before, is very much like that. The problem here is that in an MLM, you're the one being taken advantage of. Where in sales, you're selling a product. Yes, you're riding the ups and downs of making sales and not making sales, but your company isn't necessarily taking advantage of you to do that. That is likely your job and you're getting paid for it. So a lot of ups and downs, right? Like it for me, it felt like such a high every time you sign someone up, every time you get someone going, but it's like you can't keep the pace indefinitely. It just doesn't happen. And it feels so bad when you can't, or you miss that promotion, you miss that rank. You go to the event and you're not walking stage. And they create the intensity on purpose. Like they make you feel like you're missing out on something if you don't. So that contributes to the down. You feel really up when you feel like this is my solution, this is my lifeline, this is how I'm gonna change my life, but at the same time, when you're not seeing the success or you kind of, have that warning going off in your mind where you're like, "I've actually spent more money to come to this event than I have made," you know, you're kind of riding those ups and downs constantly. Justifying the bad times because the good is so good. And I mean, I feel like this is in every upline coach's playbook, right? Like you got to be in the trenches to win the war type of mentality. And for me, I take this one a little personally because we were in a travel club. We went on vacations. Of course they were fun, right? But just because I went on a great vacation and made all these amazing friends doesn't change the fact that this company is lying to us, continuing to ask for our money, and is actually going under, right? And like I said, this one's a little personal for me because um, I did meet my fiance in our MLM. We were both in it. He was in it before I was. And when I got out and started speaking out, that is the main thing that was thrown in my face. Like I don't know how many people told me, from my upline to just random people who don't even maybe didn't even mean it like that, but it was like, "Oh, you met Kelly, so it wasn't all bad, right?" And it's like, this thing took 7 years of my life. It really fucked me up mentally. It and I mean, it was my own choices, but it derailed me from a lot of my goals at that time. So, yes, I'm very glad that I, met Kelly and that we were able to make it work despite being in something like that and then both getting out. But no, that doesn't excuse any of the bad things that happened. And I think this gets wrapped up in the toxic positivity, self-help um, platitude of, just look for the silver lining and there's always a lesson. And, all those things can be true. And I do think to move forward in a healthy way, eventually you have to get to that place, but not when we're excusing the bad things that happened. Like accountability still has to be taken for those things. And unfortunately, people in MLMs generally, if they're going to stay in them, they're not going to take accountability. But at least you have to understand that, like, just because there were good things and you grew as a person and it inspired you to start your own business or you met some amazing people, like that doesn't change that there was emotional abuse going on. Um, Seeking comfort, support, validation from the person who is hurting you, whether that's your upline, whether that's your sponsor, that's your team leader, it's corporate leadership. You are fawning hardcore. You hardcore to appease these people. You start to, just like in any other cult, there's like an image of an ideal cult member, and you start to emulate that. You are starting to be shaped into that, because you do get this reinforcement when you perform the way they want you to, if you look and dress the way they want you to. I remember one time my upline was like, "You should probably buy a blazer because you look too, like a yoga teacher." And I'm like, okay. And me thinking this guy is a serious business person, maybe I should go buy a blazer. Like, you don't really realize what's going on in the time, but you are constantly trying to make these people happy and get their validation. And the thing is, at the end of the day, if you're in a network marketing company, most people are losing money. Everyone around you, no matter how happy and successful they are pretending to be, most people at the end of the day are spending more money than they're ever making. And so not only are you trying to like appease this person who may not even be as successful as they've convinced you that they are also working to keep you in something that is exploiting you. Okay, so knowing things are bad, but waiting and hoping for them to get better. This is what kept me in for so long. I had some early success, as many people do, and then it was like I didn't even know what I was doing when I first had it. So I'm like, okay, if I really learn the game and apply myself, then of course I can make this work. Of course. And so that whole ideal just keeps you in and keeps you working and keeps you going back. And, I told myself I would evaluate in a year where I was, but by that year, I was so in it and so emotionally invested that it didn't matter to me at that point that I was like, oh, yeah, I'm still in the red, but one day I'll make it, And then you have like intentionally the talks they give at these events are like, my first year I lost money, my second year I lost money, my third year I broke even, my fourth year I made $60, and then my fifth year I made 150,000, right? Like they tell you these stories intentionally to keep you in for 5 years. Whether or not that story is even true, but like that mindset isn't just someone who is working hard and believing in what they do and having a positive mindset. That is all very beneficial. This is curated by the group to keep you in. Okay, the next one. I need some water. Feeling isolated from supportive family or friends. At the very beginning, once you sign up, you are excited. You kind of do want to go tell people, but they urge you not to because they want to make sure you tell them the right way, whether that's learning the script or the presentation or having your upline with you. So just that creates this like disconnect between you and your people. I remember showing my best friends and I was so excited, but I had so much nervousness and like I prepared for it. Like I kind of like had my talk rehearsed in my head. And these are some of my best friends that I would tell anything to. But just because I started this new thing and they get their claws in you so quickly, I didn't just go up to my friends and tell them like I would tell them anything else. And that disconnect, you start to trust them before you're starting to trust your people, right? So they're already starting to create a sense of like, I can't just be open and honest and talk about this authentically and just what I think about it, but I have to tell it a certain way. And then when you actually do get to the presentation and to talking to your people about it, and you're faced with, at the extreme end, someone just straight up telling you it's a pyramid scheme or criticizing it. But most people, at least in my experience, were a lot more gentle. They would ask, questions, clarifying questions. They would show some concern. They'd show some hesitation. They'd ask, hey, I think this is one of those things, and the group has already coached you that these people are dream stealers. They don't like to see you taking a risk. Yes, they may be looking out for you, but they're holding you back. So even the best intentions from the people around you are starting to be framed as a threat to the group and your new identity with the group. And I mean, it works so well. I remember at a time actually thinking that network marketing was so great because it really showed you who everyone in your network was, because when you approached them about this, how they responded would tell you everything. And basically anything besides a positive review was framed as like, you don't really need that person in your life anymore. Let's spend time with more people over here, more people who believe in what we're doing. And so that creates that isolation. That creates this dependency on the group and the group community, and placing the importance of that over the community that you had before you joined the group in the first place. Okay, we're almost done. My throat is getting a little sore already, a little hoarse. Okay. Hiding the painful truths of your relationship with others. So, not telling anyone that you're not making money, that you haven't hit rank yet, pretending that you've made more sales than you have. That I remember a coaching session that I got where they were like, I just kept saying I closed 6 out of 10 until I started closing 6 out of 10, even when I wasn't closing 6 out of 10. Straight up just lying, to make it look like it's more successful than it is. I remember even like just learning how to be so vague about it, you know? My dad even at one point was like, "Well, I figured," he told me, he's like, "Oh, people don't make money in these things. I was in one of these things when you were born, like it was an insurance one." And and then he told I think he told my brother actually, like, "Oh, well, she must be doing okay if she's still in it," and it's like, I guess I was really good at pretending, but it was never actually paying my bills. It was never really actually, um, a successful standalone income stream or business. So, I mean, I think even from like going to the events, you're told that, you make it sound like a business trip. Make it sound like, oh yeah, I get to travel and I get to go on these business trips and it's amazing. You don't tell people how much it's costing you to go. You don't tell people that they make you pay for the ticket, because anyone who actually travels for work knows that your company doesn't make you pay for anything when you actually travel for an actual job. Feeling like you'll die without the other person, like you need them to survive. Now, this is definitely in the context of, a relationship, but um I do feel like a lot of people are made to feel that their chance in an MLM is their shot to change their life, their shot to change their situation. And I don't think that's a far off assumption that a lot of people feel that way, because people are preyed upon when they are desperate or they have a vulnerability that can be exploited, which pretty much all of us do. So if they have found something where they can convince you that this is the answer to it, a lot of people, like, I've heard directly say, like, I don't know what I would do if I didn't do this. I don't know what I would do if this company went under. And that's why when our company did go under, they jumped to another MLM, because this is what they know. They're taught to follow these leaders. They're taught to take their advice as just rules for life, and they can't see themselves doing anything else. And, one of the real drivers for me is those people that get stuck in a company at the very end. Like, my company went under, of course, they fold into other ones, and, nothing I've seen is as big as it ever was. But like, my past video on Viago, right? Like, Viago's tiny. And I don't even need to really be talking about it anymore. But the sad thing is there are so many people that are stuck in there. And they're not people that are just affluent and have the money to waste, right? Like, these are people that, may have health things going on, may not be able to work full time. They might be elderly. Like, that breaks my heart. Like, those are the people that get taken the most advantage of in these groups. And, membership can last for years. Even mine lasted for years. And so, like, they just feel like this is their one thing. If they don't do this, what else is left? And it's a very dire situation for more people than I think anyone in an MLM would admit the intensity of the situation that they're creating for so many of these downlines. Okay, 2 more. Taking the blame for their abuse. So, for me and my experience and the things that I witnessed, this was very performance based, but your upline could, if you're not performing or if you're not showing up to events, like some of them got really harsh. Some people got really harsh. I've heard of people kicked off teams because they weren't showing up enough. You're talked to in certain ways. Like, thankfully, I didn't experience anyone speaking like super disrespectfully to me personally, but like the way you're talked to, and you just treat what these people say like with such reverence. I guess that's the sad part. And then the next level of it is when these people go on to coach, and start their own coaching things, whether that's like Ray Higdon's thing or, um, there's this one leader from my company who, like, my old company, that charges 10 grand to turn you into like an iconic speaker or some shit. And like, they are just basically taking 10 grand from you and telling you to go live on Facebook every single day. And then if you don't see the success that they're claiming that you see, you're just not working hard enough. Like, this is the general narrative. If I was to distill it down, that's a general narrative. And it's like, this person is taking 10 grand from you and then telling you that you're not working hard enough. So that's just one example, but this happens in so many different ways in network marketing and then the coaching that the upline leaders give in their own programs, own audios, own books, so on and so forth. And then the last one is trying to help the person who is hurting you. And I think that's just a big, when you think of the company in itself, this company is financially exploiting you and you are proselytizing for it. You are out there not getting paid, trying to get more people to join the group and to get more people to give money to the group. And so this, from the minute to the overarching principles, this 100% describes what I saw and experienced in an MLM. And the reasons why I think that this is important is because I feel like MLM experience is kind of written off as benign. Like, most people are like, oh yeah, I was in one of those things and yeah, I didn't make any money, but it's fine. And it's written off as voluntary. They signed up for it themselves. They decided to, pay for it and continue to pay for it. Like, no one's holding a gun to your head. I think the fact that MLM reps will defend it themselves, it's like, I feel like when it comes to legislation, this is the hard part because this very same people that are being taken advantage of are the ones defending it, which is the difference between that and just like someone who gets scammed and can, admit that they got scammed, but they're not defending the scam necessarily. Admit sometimes in MLMs, these are the people because they themselves have been trained to become deployable members and are probably guilty of some of the perpetration themselves too, right? Like, I was never super high in the company. I can say top 4% because it sounds a lot better. But that doesn't mean that I didn't sign other people up. And in its own way, like, that was me now perpetuating that harm. And so, I think that this can still have very serious implications, whether you realized that there were kind of some emotional abusive things going on, whether it bothered you or not. It can still register in your system and kind of shape the way that you look at things, experience the world. I would bet there are still remnants of that influence, on your system if you haven't fully acknowledged or like processed what you have been through. And then, maybe if this wasn't your MLM experience and you still, you don't think it is that serious and yours wasn't, that's fine. But I think it's important to talk about what emotional abuse looks like and what trauma bonds are as you evaluate, any future groups that you're a part of and how much they affect your identity, any, relationships that you might be in. And, you know, there are many, workplaces, there's many places you can encounter these dynamics. So even if it wasn't in an MLM, I think it's important to talk about kind of the seriousness of some of the strategies used because they do show up and they are unhealthy. Um, and yeah, I think ultimately, like, if you experience this in any type of context, it does affect your concept of yourself. So that's why I felt like tying tying those things together in um, the specific context of the MLM, because I think it really is that serious. I don't think this is healthy for anybody to be involved in, and for those who don't think that this is as serious as it is, I think there is some learning there that could be done, some awareness around some of these, um, just some of these dynamics because they will pop up other places in your life, and um, that's how I figured it out. I again, like I mentioned, started learning a lot about narcissism. This is just some personal backstory, but like I grew up in that type of environment. And I may have mentioned this in a previous video, but I do think the environment that I grew up in led me to be more susceptible to a group like this because I was a chronic fawner and I was a perfectionist and I was taught to seek the approval of people that held, power or authority. And learning about that and what I've been through and, complex trauma and the reason that I'm reading this book brought me back to, hey, we've seen all of this before in an MLM. And the amount of people that are being affected by this is in the hundreds of thousands. So I think it's definitely worth talking about. So that is it for today. But I would love to hear if you guys had any other examples or insights. I just kind of shared a few things from my experience, but I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys, and I'll be back soon.